The knock came 3 times, sharp, insistent, and just plain wrong. I was sitting by the window in our cabin, coffee still warm in my hand, when that sound shattered 14 months of hard work in about 3 seconds flat. And through the glass right there, like some bad omen, I saw her red blazer clipboard and that smile people wear when they think they own you. Margaret Kensington, HOA president, queen of the land she could see from her porch. She'd been sending us emails for months, each one getting a little nastier than the last. Now she was right here on our porch, and she'd brought a man with her. Guy was filming our cabin like he was building some kind of case. My chest tightened. This wasn't a neighborly visit. This was an invasion. What I didn't know at that point, my wife Laurel had already filed a lawsuit 3 days back, just quietly, methodically, like she does everything. What Margaret didn't know, and this still makes me smile, was that by the end of the week she'd be wearing handcuffs. But first, she was going to make one last glorious mistake. You ever see that October light, the way it filters through the pines and turns everything gold? That's what I was watching, trying to write something deep about how the air tastes different up at 8,000 feet. My manuscript was open on my laptop, cursor blinking at the end of an unfinished sentence about elk migration patterns. Coffee was perfect, right at that sweet spot between hot and cool. This was why Laurel and I built the place. 14 months of slogging through permits, inspections, mud and lumber deliveries on roads that turned to soup every time it rained. I'd watched every board go up, every window slip into place like a puzzle. Took pictures of it all, partly for my next book, partly because I couldn't believe we were actually doing it. The county had signed off on everything last month, legal as it gets. We even got a letter from the land office parcel 17B private property outside HOA jurisdiction. Laurel had insisted on that letter. Thought she was being paranoid, but after that knock I wasn't so sure. This wasn't some friendly neighbor tapping at the door with a plate of cookies. This was 3 hard strikes made the whole door rattle. Sound bypasses, your brain goes straight to your spine. I looked up, cursor still blinking, coffee halfway to my mouth. For a second I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Then I saw movement through the window. That red blazer popping out against all the browns and greens like a warning sign. Margaret Kensington stood on my porch with that stiff practice posture clipboard tucked under her arm, already raising her other hand to knock again. Behind her, a man I'd never seen was holding up his phone camera aimed right at our door, not snapping a photo, filming recording evidence of something, though I had no idea what. The sun caught the edge of her smile, and I felt that tightness in my chest again, the kind that says trouble's here. I set my coffee down, gave myself 3 seconds to think. Laurel had warned me about, Margaret said, bullies always mistake silence for weakness. The emails had started out polite, then turned sharper, citing covenants from 1998, threatening review boards that didn't exist. Laurel had started a file on her. I'd thought she was overdoing it, but now as I watched Margaret's knuckles rise for a 4th knock, I realized maybe not. I stood up slow, considering my options. Could let her knock till her knuckles hurt, pretend I wasn't home, but she'd already seen me, and that'd just feed her narrative on camera. Could stay silent, document it, wait. But something in me snapped. I opened the door before she could hit it again. Outside, the creak got louder, wind whispering through pine needles. Margaret's smile got wider, but her eyes never warmed. The guy with the phone adjusted, making sure I was in frame. I didn't open the door all the way, no need to be too friendly. Margaret didn't care. She launched into her speech like she'd practiced in the mirror. This structure violates HOA Covenant Section 12.4, unauthorized construction on community land. Mandatory compliance review within 72 hours. Out comes the clipboard pages, flipping her fingers, stabbing at some highlighted line I couldn't see. I let her finish, then let the silence hang while I stared at the guy's camera, red dot glowing. Brought my eyes back to Margaret and said, calm as explaining science to a 5th grader, "You don't have authority here. This is Parcel 17B, private property outside HOA jurisdiction. I've got documentation if you want to see it." And just for a second, her smile flickered. Then she snapped back stronger. She went off about community standards, the board voting, legal action, daily fines. Guy behind her zoomed in on the doorframe, then swept across the front of the cabin like it was evidence for a trial. That spine-tightening sensation again, the one that says something predatory's watching. "You'll be hearing from our attorney," Margaret said, turning away before I could respond. Cameraman kept filming as they walked to their black SUV parked half blocking our drive. Margaret paused to take her own photos. 3 different angles. Building her case, I guess. Engine rumbled to life, scared a pair of jays from the pine, and then they were gone. Dust and silence and me heart-pounding staring at my cold coffee. Forest looked the same, but the light felt different. Less peaceful. More exposed. I picked up my phone and called Laurel. She answered on the second ring, cool and collected, said, "I've been expecting this. Don't engage. I'll be home by 7. She arrived early, calm as a surgeon, before the first cut with takeout Thai food in her leather briefcase. We ate in peace, her asking about my manuscript, about the Elk chapter editor, deadlines, normal stuff, but I could see her mind 3 moves ahead already lawyering. After dinner, she opened the briefcase and said, "Show me everything." We went through Margaret's emails, starting with the fake friendly first one, then the ones getting darker. Eventually, she's citing fake covenants, demanding we stop construction, warning of legal doom. Last one had an official-looking cease and desist letter from Patterson and Associates. Laurel zoomed in, mouth twitching, not a smile. "This isn't real," she said. "There's no such law firm." She ran a search, checked the Bar Association, nothing. Just a dentist in Kansas and a plumber in Oregon. "So Margaret's fabricating legal documents," Laurel said, so quiet I barely heard her. "That's a crime." Next morning, Laurel was up before sunrise, documents spread out, highlighters, printouts, legal pads, everywhere. "Pulling the HOA covenants, the survey, the county letter," she said, eyes locked on the laptop. By the time the sun cleared the ridge, she had 3 neat piles, original covenants, our survey, and the land office letter. "Parcel 17B is outside the subdivision, always has been. HOA has no authority here." "So why's Margaret pushing this?" I asked. Laurel closed the laptop. "Because she's been getting away with it for years." That afternoon, my phone buzzed a tag on the Pinewood Ridge community group. Margaret had posted a photo of our cabin zoomed in from the road with the caption, "Concerned residents should be aware of violations currently occurring on Forest View Drive." The comments exploded, neighbors piling on, talking about community standards, property values. A few questioned her but got drowned out by the outrage. This was no longer just a legal fight. This was a mob with torches and pitchforks. I texted Laurel the screenshot. Her answer, "Don't respond, don't engage. I'm handling it." Over the next 2 hours, the post got shared 15 times, people I'd never heard of chiming in, adding fuel. Margaret replied, thanking folks for their vigilance. She was painting herself as the hero, us the threat. When Laurel got home, she pulled out a fat manila folder. "Been building this for 6 months, she said. At the top, a civil court filing Ridge versus Kensington, claims of harassment, defamation, abuse of authority, emotional distress. Filed Monday, she said. Summons and restraining order application are being processed. Should be ready by Friday." "You knew she'd escalate," I said. Laurel met my eyes. "People like Margaret always do. They mistake silence for weakness. They never expect someone to fight back with actual law. This isn't revenge. This is about stopping her before she does it to someone else." That night, I lay awake thinking about Margaret's mob. Part of me wanted to respond, defend us, but Laurel's words echoed, "Trust the process. Truth over noise." Still, trust felt fragile with public opinion swirling like a storm outside. Wednesday, a certified letter arrived. County inspector, complaint filed, site visit in 10 days. Or risk fines. We had all our permits. This was just harassment dressed up as bureaucracy. Laurel called the county, rattled off our permit numbers, asked who filed the complaint. Anonymous, but the email traced back to an HOA domain. The inspector closed the complaint as unfounded. That afternoon, Margaret called my cell, voice all sugary, but with an edge. "The board will seek $25,000 in damages unless you cooperate. I said, "We're recording this and you have no legal authority here." Her tone cracked. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Then she hung up. That night, flashlight beams in the trees, Margaret and her cameraman on our property, measuring something. I dialed the sheriff, called out, "You're trespassing, this is private property." They left slow and unhurried, but they left. Friday morning, Laurel returned looking energized. She had the full case now, affidavits, financial records, fake law firm letter, and the restraining order active as of midnight. At 10, Margaret showed up with 4 board members and her camera guy declaring a mandatory hearing, or she'd put a lien on our property. Laurel stepped forward, cool, lethal. "I'm an attorney. This is a civil summons. You've been served." Margaret's hands shook as she took the envelope. The board looked at her like she'd grown horns. Laurel read them. The Riot Act board had never voted for legal action. Margaret had been acting alone, forged signatures, missing money. The treasurer looked stricken, secretary furious. By the time they drove away, the group was fractured. Later, the treasurer Sterling called asking to meet with the board. "No, Margaret." 4 nervous board members sat in our living room. Laurel walked them through Margaret's whole scheme: fraudulent bills, fake law firms, forged approvals. The number $78,500 missing in 3 years. Sterling and Geneva, the secretary, were horrified. They vowed to report everything. Lockdown, accounts, suspend Margaret immediately. "Can you hold off your lawsuit?" Sterling asked. Laurel shook her head. "No, the lawsuit stands, but I'll help with your investigation." The forensic accountant arrived Saturday. Quiet man, fast worker. He traced the fraud, Margaret's shell company, fake landscaping contracts, legal fees, to nowhere. Margaret had created a whole shadow operation. Geneva cried quietly, "This is embezzlement. This is a prison." That afternoon, Margaret came back alone, desperate, begging us to let her fix it, saying her family didn't know. She fell to her knees, sobbing. Laurel told her, "You had chances to stop. This is out of our hands now. You need a lawyer." Margaret left broken, and I'll be honest, it didn't feel like a win, just necessary. Sunday, a whistleblower reached out. Contractor named Thatcher had proof. Margaret forced him to inflate invoices, threatened his business, blacklisted him when he refused. Had evidence for multiple other contractors and HOA's fraud, over $200,000, maybe more. Laurel called the detective time for a formal statement. Monday, the knock came again, this time the sheriff's office. We gave our statements, handed over evidence. By Tuesday, Margaret was arrested, $75,000 bail, but the damage was done. Local news ran the story. Community chat exploded, people sharing their own stories of Margaret's intimidation. The HOA board apologized to us and started real reforms: independent audits, term limits, transparency. In the end, we got our legal fees back, a written statement that our land was private, and the reforms to prevent this from ever happening again. Thursday evening, sitting on our porch, sun turning the woods gold, Laurel and I held hands. We'd built this place with our own sweat. We protected it with truth. Now it was truly ours, safe at last. I keep thinking about Margaret, how power warped her, how she could have stopped any time but kept going. The price of fighting back was high, but letting her win would have been worse. We didn't get revenge, we got accountability. And finally, justice. So let me ask you, where's the line between standing up for yourself and letting things go? When does holding people accountable cross over into revenge? Ever had someone in power abuse it over you? Drop your story in the comments. Let's talk about what real justice looks like.